2 minutes. He already knows my weakness. Plus, he took advantage of me coming in late last night, jet lagged, and we're sitting there. It's 1 in the morning. Hey, will you speak in the morning and keep it to 2 minutes? Sure. I don't know what it will be about. So I'm just now hearing I'm going to speak on Kenya. Yeah, but I do love Kenya. My wife and I are looking in increasingly splitting our time between the U.S. and Kenya. I love it here. So let me try to quickly comment on the first question about Kenya. Kenya is quite well developed, I would say, as it relates to frontier markets. The one thing I'll say is that we ourselves as Sinapis continue to evolve as the market itself changes. And I think that's true for all of us here, right? We do not function in static environments. And so ourselves, within Sinapis, we provide training programs. We have that, which is at the idea stage that was launched back in 2018. To go along with kind of our flagship, we talk about a very practical mini MBA, our academy, that really goes back to the very inception, or our first pivot actually was out of a classic accelerator into, because of the desire to really be able to serve more, to be able to provide this sort of very practical grounding and what are the key skills and knowledge bases for entrepreneurs to continue to grow their businesses. We're now, as you would have seen last night with Ascent, we're beginning to shift more emphasis into what we're now kind of labeling acceleration advisory. And some of that is also tied to where the market is. With other organizations here in Nairobi, and our founders are the first to say this, that the market when they started Sinapis 11 years ago, very different than what it is today. And so we do find ourselves moving increasingly into how do we bring more advisory into play, and also the capital, financial capital. We've always had some role, probably more ad hoc, but that's something that we're looking to do more. So let me kind of transition from the first question to the second. Our strategy is kind of anchored around 3 pillars. We talk about model, equip, and inspire. So model is really what we deliver currently in the markets that we serve, which is in East Africa. That could change over time, but that's really where our staff is, where we deliver, and where we are able to experiment, innovate, and then that kind of leads to the second pillar, which is equip. And that really speaks to some of what we're doing here. We have those of you who are probably more closely connected as partners, where we're sharing curricula, we help get things stood up, but we want to really be seeing others equipped to serve in their own markets. And then that ties to the third pillar of inspire, which I would say this conference, which we're really excited about, really is in that. And we don't in any way try to say, well, we're the ones that are the vanguard, or we're leading this. Not at all. What we want to be is working hand in hand, very open-handed, but really seeing this as a community. I mean, we talk about creating community in our own markets, but this is a community. And how is it that we can share learnings, share experiences that are beneficial? And it's not a cut and dried situation. As I was sitting here listening, you know, the image that comes to mind for me is we're all gardeners. We're gardeners in our own gardens. And when we talk about ecosystem, there's not a single ecosystem. Just as you think about gardens, you know, an English garden looks nothing like a French garden. Not at all. It looks uncultivated, you know, on first glance. That's not the case. It has a very different aesthetic. Gardens in arid areas looks very, very different. It's the same in the ecosystems, the places we are each found. And so what I would say is what works in Kenya isn't necessarily going to work in other markets, but there are learnings to be taken. And so that's, you know, getting to the second question, I don't have a nice clean answer other than to say, we see these as times to first of all, build relationships. But from this, how do we begin to extract learnings? And what I would encourage each of us to do, and I think this is, as we continue to take this forward, I think you won't find like, oh, that's what I'm going to repeat in my market. You know, it's not as simple as that. But God has called us to be creators. You know, we're not to do cut and dried stuff. And that may not be fun at first, but that's the beauty of it. And so I think for me, it's just like we encourage our entrepreneurs, the guys that you saw pitch last night, we push on them from the very beginning. What is the problem that you are trying to solve? What is the unmet need? You have to be anchored in that. And I think that's where it starts for each of us. In our markets, what are the problems? What are the flashpoints? What are the things that we're really struggling with or where we see opportunities? If you anchor on that and then begin to hear, okay, here are some things I'm hearing. Like, you know, in India, you know, this idea of having your own, we've been thinking about this, we've not moved forward, but where is the opportunity to have our own businesses that are redemptive in their own right? I don't know whether we'll ever do that, but, you know, there are opportunities to learn, but it's not just, oh, I'm just going to take this and plug it in. So I think the common denominator, at least the way I think, is know what is the unmet need I'm trying to solve in my ecosystem, and with that anchoring, what is it that I'm hearing from others? And then, and that's what I would ask that we each walk away with, I know who I want to connect with continuing forward. Whether we try to have working committees after Cairo, and that, you know, it's very hard to have that momentum, but if you are anchored in that which you know is what you're trying to solve, and you see where there are things to learn from and engage in the creative process, and you'll find that it's symbiotic. I think that's how this continues to build as a movement. Angelo talks about a playground, and this is my final comment. But the playground, I think, is such a great analogy, you know, because what is a playground? Yeah, kids play, but it's creative space. And I know for in the West, the problem is, and you hear this from educators, we don't create enough space for the kids to just play. And that's our problem. We don't create enough time to really explore. To the degree that we do create that time, we create the playground. We take advantage of the playground. I think that's where the creativity happens, and that's where gardens can begin to flourish, learning from other gardens. So that's not a nice, clean answer, but that's where we want to see it go.